You're listening to the Road to Wisdom podcast, weaving stories told by wonderful minds about all things motherhood, health, intimacy, politics, nature, and everything in between.
Join us on an adventure discovering unique experiences that we can learn from to enhance the ways in which we live.
We are your hosts, Chloe
and Keshia. Welcome everyone for today's show. Today we have a beautiful guest, Luci Lampe. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Very close. It's Lampe.
Lampe.
Just Luci Lampe.
Luci Lampe.
Kind of rolls off the tongue.
And I've been so excited for this chat with you because I stumbled across your Instagram page and literally every single part of it just sung to me. It's and then I did more research and like everything you do just sings volumes to me and to us, because something that I was about to say when we were off air, but I'll say it now, is that it's really hard to find someone who is embodying their sexual essence and really into, everything. Just like
walking the path,
like intimacy, sex, who also has a family. And it's not easy to find that. And
but not just a family. You have 4 kids.
Yeah.
We both have 4 kids. You're like, okay, this is a person that actually knows what we need.
Yeah, like someone we can actually relate to, because you listen to other sexologists and sex therapists and their advice, and a lot of the time it's not coming from, like, maybe they have 1 child, maybe they have 2 children, but it's still a different game when you're going into your 3s, 4s and 5s. So it's really nice to be able to to have found you, Luci, and to be able to talk to you about all this stuff, which I love talking about intimacy and sex. I think it's one of the founding pillars, or should be, for any relationship, and something that me and my husband have fallen back on when we've needed it to. So excited for this conversation. Actually, I should put a little disclosure for all of our listeners, especially family and friends, that this conversation could get heated and information
juicy.
And information may come out that you don't want to hear about your son-in-law or son-in-laws,
daughters, brothers and sisters.
So we'll put that one out there. Maybe turn it off now. It could be inappropriate. And also let's be mindful of little ears. Luci, take the stage.
Oh my God. I mean, where do we begin? I love that you are moms also, and that this is a focus, something that you emphasize and bring awareness to in your life, because there is also, I hear from a lot of fellow moms that are like, yeah, I thought that you and your husband were this like polyamorous couple in Bali or something. Just like the way that you are with each other. I'm like, no, we're with each other. We have 4 kids. We've made all of these kids together. Like, we've been married for almost 17 years. And we've been through a lot together. We weren't always these people. We have become these people together. And I think that it's also really important to highlight that all of this is a process. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. But I love getting to awaken more of a vision in people that literally didn't know that this was even possible. And that's one of the best parts of getting to share the journey openly. Yeah, any direction you want to take the conversation, I am open.
Well, I think it'd be great to start there, because being a mum of young children, our children are still quite young, where our oldest, not yours just yet, my oldest turns 8 next week, and my youngest is nearly 2. So lots of babies in a smushed space there. But, you know, those young years with children do really test your relationship. I think that it's a very intense time, and it's a beautiful time, and there's so many changes, but in terms of your relationship, that really does test you at, you know, having so many kids, so many dependents. And then, you know, my husband can work away quite a bit. So there's a lot of pressure there. And I find that lots of families, like even those who don't have so many kids, do feel that same pressure. And it's so easy to fall into the habits of ships sailing in the night kind of expression. Yeah. And I guess where I'd love to start is, how would we, if we were in that rut of new babies and
Just
running around after
disconnection.
kids, keeping the household in a financially stable position, like, and it's, you know, those stresses, like, how do we find our way back to each other from that?
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of potential in that question. One of the big, I like to try to keep it as simple and actionable as possible. So even when the kids are really young, and there's not really a predictable schedule, but even when there is, you know, stuff is going to happen. Things will get in the way. Things will come up when you have other things planned. A kid will get sick, and then everybody gets sick, and you know, things like that. But it's if we make it a habit to be intentional about just connecting. So we put so much pressure on sex, right? Like it needs to. I'm not a big fan of actually scheduling sex, but I am 100% for scheduling erotic playtime, just erotic containers.
Can you go
Where
into the detail of what an erotic playtime or container would look like?
Oh yes. So of course, this depends on what anybody is into, right? What do you like? What helps your body to feel more at ease? What does your partner's body respond to? And also the climate of that season of life. What do you need more of then? Do you need something a little bit more tender and sensual and soft, or something a little bit more intense and more primal and more just like, you know, like aggressive in a really yummy way? And that piece right there requires such an attunement with your own body. So what I always will bring it back to, like the first actual step before you can even connect with the other person, is really connecting with yourself. And I find that this is usually the hardest part for us to do when we are in this kind of a survival mode in those early years, because there are so many things to respond to that my default mode anyways was just to do. And then even when there was nothing to do, I would find more to do. And my body, my nervous system just didn't feel safe to just relax and just be at ease. So even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes a day to just be at ease in your body. Literally when our youngest, who was going to be 8 soon, but when he was a baby, he had the worst scream. He would just like scream. It was like the most alarming thing to my system. I would be like shaking for minutes. I'm like, what's happening? I would just, if I could just get 5 minutes of quiet time before he started screaming again, just very consciously recalibrating my system, like going into my visualizations and whatever I was doing at that time. The cumulative impact of that day after day after day, it makes a big difference. And so it doesn't have to be this big elaborate routine, but just find a practice that calls to you, devote yourself to it, even if it's just in a little bits at a time, and just trust the unfolding of your process. But then there's the coming together, right? So again, those erotic containers, the difference between scheduling sex and scheduling an erotic space is that, one, there is no clearly defined finish line of orgasm or ejaculation. Usually, you know, for a lot of couples, right? Once he comes, or once they both come, hopefully at least that, then they're done. They're good. Success, like goal, you know? And that's like we're making it a long ways from just him coming to both of them coming, right? So then we're like, we both win. And that's kind of this equal balance thing. Everybody's feeling pleasure. But then there's so much more. A lot of times what we crave is the erotic aliveness and the erotic tension and that like juicy, yummy, like milking that more than we crave the orgasm itself. I love orgasms, don't get me wrong. I'll have multiple every day, and I do. But it's not about
Good
that.
for you, girl.
Yeah. I feel like I was there once upon a time.
Hey Lucy, I'd actually just really love for you to quickly just like give us a quick, super quick, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but just a quick definition of like erotic and like eros, because for people who are a little bit like vanilla, are listening to erotic, being like, that sounds like it's giving me porny vibes, or it's giving me like whips and chains vibes. Like, so I just want to like clear it up and be like, no, this is what it is.
It could be whips and chains.
It could be whips and chains. Like, hey, if you're into that, you go do that. You do that. But I just want to like,
I love whips and chains.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
And we're in. Get your tea, people.
I can revisit that later if you wish.
This conversation will not get silly. It won't get silly.
It will. No, but like, I'm going to, like, before Lucy even gets to answer your question, but that's the best thing I think about you, Lucy, and your page, and because it's not just this serious, everything is erotic and sensual and sexy and serious. Like playful. You bring the play into it and the fun into it, and like, and that's what it should be about. So anyway, erotic. Yes. What are we talking about?
Thank you for seeing that. Thank you for that. Okay. So erotic. If anyone listening wants to go deeper into this, there is a specific book that I will just recommend right off the bat. And it is called A Return to Eros by Mark Gaffney and Christina Kincaid. It's a little bit long. You can get it on audiobook. But I love the way that he defines it in this. This is the closest thing that I could find that really feels like, yes, this awakens so much of me. So one of the ways they define it is that Eros is the heart of life itself. So the sexual models the erotic, but they're not the same. Sexual things can be highly erotic, or they can be void of the erotic. If it's lacking that connection and that feeling of aliveness. So the way that I like to think of it is like this current of energy that's running within us. This coursing like pulse of life. That we're just drinking a cup of tea can be extremely erotic. Crying can be erotic. You know, all of these very like big, fully feeling things in our hearts. The recognizing the eros in that. Another way that he specifically defined it was like being on the inside. You know, when you're like in on something with someone and you maybe like an inside joke or something, and you get it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in there with you. It's also kind of like that feeling of like, you know, we're in on this thing together. It's exciting. Like,
I love that.
You know.
And Keshia has actually spoken about it before. She's like, you know, those times you're just feeling like everything's just like you look at the flowers and you're like, oh, or like you look at your friend and you're like, oh, you're so hot. Like you're killing it.
Yeah.
Like it's like that. Like when she says that, I'm like, yeah, I miss that.
But like, I miss that. And I find that like, you know, when we've had these conversations, when my libido's really on fire, like when I just feel like that, it really like just leaks out into the whole day and my whole life. And like I look at my kids and I'm just like, oh, you're so awesome. And like, I'll go for a walk and be like, how beautiful is like where you live and how great's the beach. And then I'll see my friends and I'm like, oh, you're just glowing today. Like, and it's all that it's coming from inside me. It's coming from inside that place. And then, you know, I feel so switched on with my husband and everything like runs really smoothly in the house and it's all awesome. Yeah. And we've been in that place before and we've actually been able to hold it for quite large periods of time, and at the moment we're not there. It's definitely
I think
more of a stressed and just heads down in the grind kind of place. So I'm wondering how to get back to
Let's
that.
go back to the erotic. Let's go back to the erotic container, because I said to myself I didn't want to derail that. I want to hear about this erotic container.
Thank you for bringing it back, because this is like such a key thing. Okay, so like when we take the pressure off of trying to fix something or trying to like grasp and get something out there, because that whole feeling that you're just turned on, and not just aroused sexually, but you're just turned on, you're tapped in, Abraham Hicks says, like, tuned in, tapped in, turned on, the whole thing. And it's that feeling of just like, oh yeah, like I'm fucking alive, and you just, the clarity to it, there is a holiness to it. And that's that wholeness. Like there's no part of you that you're, like, no, there's such a deep remembrance and reconciliation of these different parts of ourselves that we may have judged. So the erotic containers, well, I can give you an example of what some of ours look like.
Beautiful.
Just to give you some reference point. However, I will set a disclaimer that I really do enjoy. We're very kinky people. So
I couldn't tell by your Instagram.
Starting with the exhibitionist kink, right? But it could be, sometimes we'll just go into the bedroom. Like a couple nights ago, he okay, yeah, I'm going there. So he said, I want to take care of you tonight. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? In the past, it could be, I have all these things that my mind goes to, right? But I love to be in the mystery of the moment while also knowing how to communicate. Okay, I'm definitely not wanting this, and I am open to this. We'll see how it goes. And then this I would really like. And so then he can take that as, instead of thinking it more like a dominant role, it's the leading role. This is something we really learned from our mentor and friend, Kimmy Inch, who's a professional sex educator and dominatrix, that he's in that leadership role in that container. By container, I mean there is a time and a place that we are meeting, and there is an intention that this is going to be a sacred erotic space. It's not something we flippantly do and we just like, well, do you feel like, what do you feel like doing? You want to watch TV or you want to go upstairs? It's like, no, we have set this time aside to slow down and be more deeply present with each other. So I go into the bedroom. He tells me, sit down here, and the music is on and the candles are lit and there's the vibe. The light is red. We have different color settings. Just these little little touches of intention. And so he kept his clothes on. So there was this extra barrier, right? So he's not just out there trying to like fuck me. He's really going to take care of me and take his time. And he went through these various things with me, and I, got there multiple times, and then he flipped me over and he started scratching me and spanking me and pulling my hair and all the things that I like. And so it's like this is an erotic space. In that particular time, it was more like very clearly defined. This is the one receiving. This is the one leading. But even if we're taking turns, there is a complete de-emphasizing of there has to be an orgasm. And that is the metric of success that we are gauging this whole experience. Instead, we're focusing on connection, presence, eye contact, really seeing each other, slowing down to be able to feel like the energy that the other person's body, is it expanding? Is it contracting? Is it like kind of, where's the resistance? And then letting that be the guide as to what happens next. And then it just so happens that the orgasms that do happen are because we're not like clenched in trying to make it happen. There's an expansiveness to it. Yeah. And that's when it's really, really good. I couldn't come during sex until after I started doing my self-pleasure ritual several years ago. So there is that too. There's this practice of opening to pleasure within myself and then translating that into us.
Yeah. Well, now that we're there, actually, I wanted to ask, and I'll preface this with my husband and I started doing your Rewilding Lovers course, which was awesome because it did bring that play and fun back into it, especially because we have gone through a little bit of a lull, just with him being away working so much and me being really occupied with the kids and also this podcast. But so we were like, awesome, let's do this. Let's get back into it. And I think your first day, the practice was just like asking consent, like getting proper consent and asking for what you want. And I was sitting there like, I don't know what I want. Like I wouldn't know what to ask for because I actually don't have any idea what I want. And I think like maybe that would lead into I need to do a self-care practice, like a self-pleasuring practice or something to figure out what I want and like what my wants and needs are again when it comes to intimacy, because I was just like, I don't, like Togo was like, yeah, this. And I'm sitting there
that happens a lot, by the way, a lot. Like the men know exactly what they want and the women are like, I don't know.
Yeah. So how do we tap into that? How do we figure out what we want in our intimacy and in our sex life? And I mean, I'm even happy for the rest of this conversation to take sex off the table. Like I'm more into the intimacy and the connection and eye contact. My God, in Australia, it is such a rare thing to find eye contact. Like
really?
even just day to day, like just encounters. Like no one wants to hold. Like you get awkward if you hold eye contact for too long.
It does get awkward though here too. We're always awkward with people because we maintain it like pretty intense eye contact.
Yeah, you're just like no.
And I don't know. I don't know. I'm like I tell people I'm like maybe it's all the Scorpio in our chart. What it is.
Yeah, but it's something that like, you know, if I ever see like, you know, scenes on TV shows, and I'll just put it out there, Outlander, the best scenes in that is just them holding eye contact, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Well, see, there you go. That's the one thing you want.
There you go.
This is actually a great reference point. This is actually great.
Write it down.
Because a lot of times, write that down. A lot of times women will know, like, they'll have a reference of like a fantasy, not a fantasy that you like fantasize about and get off on, but like something that you're like, oh my God, that pulls at my heart and I want that. A scene from a movie or a book or a novel, an erotic novel or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. There's some kind of reference point that we usually have. For me, okay, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but okay, I got
safe space.
I can't, and I used to talk about this a lot. I haven't talked about it in a while. It hasn't been relevant, but I remember one time, it was probably about 8 years into marriage. So right now we're coming up on 17, right? So this was 8 whole years into marriage. We're walking down the beach and Ryan's like, what are some of your fantasies? And we had never talked about this before. It was just very something you keep to yourself. And I was like, I don't have any. I like what we do. That's fine. I barely wanted what we were doing. I felt like I had to psych myself up. And he was such a generous lover too. He would wait like 15 minutes for me to come before putting it in. But even then I was like, I couldn't feel like, I had like a numb vagina honestly inside. And that was just common. But and I finally was like, you know what? I do have this one fantasy, but you're going to laugh. I was like, okay. He said, what is it? It can't be that bad. I'm like, okay, well, so it's a cartoon. It's a cartoon. No, and I said, and so I'm Snow White and the 7 dwarves, but except that they're like hot men, just like hanging out, ready to do whatever I ask them to do, and they're just all there for me. I'm like, that's my fantasy. That seems hot. And he was like, oh, okay.
He's
so
like,
his mind goes to like porn, gangbang.
Like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's like,
you want a gangbang?
His mind goes to like, yeah, exactly. So he got excited. But anyway.
Really, all you really wanted was like someone fixing the sink, someone.
Right.
in the
I just want a
garden,
person for this and a person for that. I want
I need
somebody to,
7
prune
men
my
just
tomatoes.
fix my shit up.
But you just like look through the kitchen window in the morning and there's literally like 7 grown-ass men fixing shit around the house. So, Ryan, this is
You know
not
what,
quite,
though?
not quite.
Oh, that's kind of hot though. And
Yes,
anytime he
yeah.
fixes something, I'm like very turned on. I'm like, yeah, he's taking care of it,
I actually
But
agree
that
with
was really
that.
a
It is
fantasy.
hot, yeah.
Oh, and that was legit a fantasy that I would get off on at the time. In the very rare occasion that I would masturbate, because at that time I was just like, I'm not that person. I don't need to. I'm not one of these women who has like all this desire. I just hadn't tapped into it yet. Because it's for me. At that time, I thought that was for him. And that's why there was that big disconnect between our, just the way that we looked at sex.
Well, this is really interesting because like you went so far into your marriage. So I would say like if someone was like 8 years into their marriage and they're like not having sex, they're not like you don't feel like, oh, this, I don't know, I feel like this isn't that good. I feel like a lot of people would start questioning their marriage and be like, maybe this isn't right. But you guys went from 0 to 100 after being together for so long. Like what actually was the crux of like that moving on to that? Like how did you go from that to finding this like, like you guys have this synergy about you. Are you just like on Instagram? I mean, we're only watching videos on Instagram. Yeah. I'm sure it's a lot different. Maybe it's hotter. I don't know. But you look at you two and you're like, whoa, like these two are like young kids in love, like all over each other. Like just, it's so playful.
And we're just like that.
Beautiful.
If you come over, we're just like grossly like that.
But it's amazing. And you're like, cool. Okay, you've been together for 17 years. You have 4 kids. How did you go from not having pleasure on your own, just being like, your life is about pleasure?
Well, okay. So really I would say life is about the fullness of feeling. So as much as we really a big part of it, this is the not so sexy part, right? But a big part of it was connecting with that deep pain and grief and all of those things that were tucked away. And the more that was liberated and out in the open, and we got to connect and heal through all of these things and our childhood traumas and our attachment styles and our abandonment wounds and all of these things, our capacity for love and pleasure grows along with that. So it's like it grows in proportion, and you can't selectively numb stuff. So it has taken a lot of vulnerability and courage, to say things in real time and stay current with each other, not knowing exactly how it's going to land or if it's going to stir up some drama, which I would say that the first year and a half of us really awakening to our hearts was just messy. It was just really messy. And that only happened because of those 2.5 years of depression and disability that he went through. And then during that time, I went through an autoimmune disorder while I was pregnant at the end of my pregnancy with our youngest. And so I had a disabled husband. I was the sole provider. I had 3 kids, 1 under 1, and I was pregnant. And I had this condition, and that was my wake-up call. That was the catalyst. That was like, okay, that took us past just this space of before that, talking about our fantasies and opening up and being more vulnerable about the dark taboo stuff, and really got like to the meat of stuff, because I just couldn't live like that anymore. I had some really dark moments, and when I began to wake up to myself, and it wasn't just a phase and it wasn't just a fad or a high from an event or a conference. And Ryan really saw that. He started to get more curious and dip his toes in. So what you see now is that we're both doing this inner work, and we're both deeply committed to our relationship with the source of love and then with each other. But it has been a journey.
Did it start off like that, or did you have to take the lead when it came to going deep? Because I know that like a lot of relationships And taking my own, for example, like we've hit a really rock bottom place as well in the past. And that was actually the catalyst for us to do something about it. Like when we went to bloody couples therapy and it was zero help at all. I think the only takeaway that was good was like, well, whether you break up or stay together, you've got kids, so you may as well try and figure out how to get along. And we were just like, shit.
Yeah. Like, damn it. Yeah. Not what I was hoping for.
and that was like the only takeaway that I think either of us got out of that. And then we tried to do our own research, and then that led us down the path of Tantra, and we booked in for a tantric course, and then I fell pregnant with our third, and we were just like, oh shit, like we can't go back to what we were. Like we need to keep on this path of improving because we know another baby's going to bring chaos again, and we need tools to come back to each other and not be resenting each other and all the fun stuff. So we did this Tantra course, and it started off with, okay, I want you guys like fully clothed, just look in each other's eyes for 5 minutes. And we were like, both of us were just like in tears by the end of it. Yeah. And we couldn't believe, like after, I think we did 5 or 6 counseling sessions, and we did one tantric session. We're like, wow, like that just was so much more powerful than I think anything we could have ever done conventionally. And and that brought us into looking into our intimacy and looking into sex. And I think where I started with this was with other couples. You don't really want to get to that rock bottom place where now you have to work your way up. And so many couples would get to that rock bottom place and call quits. Whereas like it's almost, I mean, if you can not get there, I would suggest that. But if you do get there, that's where the potential lies to open yourselves up to each other and create a much deeper connection. And then and then get really vulnerable because you've got nowhere else to go. Like you kind of have to. So, I mean, what would you suggest to couples who are on their way down or feel like they're there? Where would your first step be?
I mean, one thing that I found, and this has been coming up a lot lately, just this week alone, is the way that the language that we use around the experiences that we're having really matters. It shapes our experience of the reality that we're experiencing. So for example, hitting rock bottom, it could be hitting rock bottom, or it could be an initiation. It could be a death portal. And then on the other side, there could be the next evolution of the relationship instead of, well, this is shit, like, we don't want to bypass the very real feelings that are coming up. And this feels shitty. This feels hard. This feels like hell. I mean, it felt like hell. It's this loop of insanity that no matter what you do, you keep going to the same thing. That's to me that hell. So when they find themselves in that place and they can just kind of zoom out and recognize that, one, they're not broken and their relationship is not broken. So it's not a project that needs to be fixed. There is a disconnect, and a disconnection can be there's more possibility in that, in reconciling this disconnection, than there is in trying to fix something that's broken, because then it's a problem. And we're approaching it as if it's a problem instead of with curiosity and openness and love. So if there's one question that I would ask if I were in that position, or if I could go advise myself now, like myself back then, is just, if there was one thing to focus on, is finding, as that Rumi quote goes, right? Finding the barriers to love. And that's it. Because when you find those barriers to love around your own heart, around your own body, not necessarily to your partner, but knowing that your relationship with your partner is a reflection of your openness to that love. And that already just shifts the underlying energy moving forward. Because nobody wants to be in a relation or like be somebody's project.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of women who come to me, they're like, my partner isn't this and that, and he needs to fix this. And he feels like a project. And so then he's more distant and more resistant. And that's what doesn't work.
That's a good reminder, because it's like we do have so much power in just shifting our own energy and softening and and we can change that whole environment. And then often if you do try and soften and work through your own barriers, you see that reflected in how your partner will respond to you. So yeah, I actually needed that reminder today, earlier.
Yeah. And sometimes it does look very soft and more tender and like just very, I'm here with you. How can I love you better? How can I love you more in this moment right now? And sometimes it's like that like deep wisdom oracle that needs to come through, and it's kind of a cutting truth. But even that can be done with so much love when our own judgments and shame and things, projections are not clouding the vision. So we can say it with like a really deep, powerful presence instead of like a flighty, like little girl, entitled princess energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've been in both camps, and I tell you, that little entitled princess energy does not work.
It never has. It just doesn't.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good one to sit on for a bit, everyone. Amazing. So then if we're taking it out of, we're coming back to ourselves, we're coming back to connection, and we're opening up. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there who would want to do the work, and probably a majority of our listeners are women who want to start that journey but don't know how to broach it with their partners, or don't know how to talk about it. Like, how would you suggest starting that conversation? Because if someone asked me, I'd be like, oh, just like hold their penis for a bit.
I'm not kidding you. Like whenever I'm like having a quick whinge about like we'll be pre-recording, about to sit down together, and I'm like, oh, I'm really pissed off. Like Brenton's grumpy at me and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, have you tried holding his dick for a couple of minutes? I'm like, no.
Like first thing in the morning, honor his cock and just give it a caress.
She's like, you don't have to, you just hold it. Just hold it. Just cup it.
Just hold it.
Okay, babe, I'll give it a
cup. Cup the balls. Cup the balls and stroke the dick.
Even when they're
That's
angry
solid,
at you, just grab it.
That's solid.
Yeah. And I did do
it'll change. I'm like, it'll change the.
No, it did.
That could work.
I've done it once, and like I'm not gonna lie, it did soften the blow.
I give great advice.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I could recommend it
to everyone if you want to change the environment.
If your man responds to it, go for it. Now, if he feels violated by it, take that as feedback.
Michael, sorry, I was just giving it a try.
Sorry, Keshia told me I should. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to support you.
I heard it on the road to wisdom one time, and
oh my god,
they said to hold your cock.
It's not relationship advice. Take it with your own grain of salt, but also do it.
Like a ancient advice. Hold the cock. Yeah. I mean, there is something there. But you know what? Actually, that's literally a thing that we have done, and it was so healing for him to do this whole ritual, like a very intentional ritual of cock worship, and vice versa when he did this to me and my body. But it's like so vulnerable to just receive without needing to reciprocate or needing to take turns. there's a lot there.
My husband would disagree with that, but he's like, no,
a lot of women have more trouble with receiving than the men, I have found.
And that goes in every single aspect of life. So not just.
And then we're not receiving the nourishment from the life around us because we're like thinking that I need to do something to earn it, or I need to be productive before I can feel good. So really, honestly, like it's those micro moments throughout the day that you let yourself just feel good for no damn reason. Just feeling the nourishment of whatever is in your environment and the life inside of you. So, I mean, there are so many different practices you can explore, but when it comes to like together, that like approaching a partner, like you were asking, I think you were referring to the context of approaching a partner, right? Not what can I do in my journey? Okay. Yeah. So, well, actually, I would still bring it back to, are you devoted to your own practice, to yourself, for yourself? Or are you bringing this to a partner because, well, you know, you're outsourcing that to him? And there's a lot of nuance in there, right? But also, I have seen a big pattern of this, that men or women both do this, will say, well, when my partner can do this, then I'll feel good about it. Instead of, how can I take more ownership of this and embody it for me? That was what changed so dramatically when I started to do the self-pleasure practice in a conscious, heart-opening way, not just rushing through it, was that I learned how to really slow down and get in tune with what my body needs before I touch her this way, before I penetrate. And that helped me to learn how I like to be touched. Not because he didn't have the patience to do it, but because I had so many stories in my head keeping me from being that present with myself when he was also present. So
yeah, and I feel like, I mean, we've actually just recently had a sex therapist who specializes in porn on, Joe Robertson, and we were talking about like how porn disconnects you so much, and you know, as you know, younger, no, older teens, we had both watched porn, and it's almost like, you know, oh, that's what everyone wants and likes, and that's how it's meant to be done.
right.
Which obviously is not everyone.
Not true.
Terrible, terrible, terrible place to go for sex information. But yeah, where was I going this? Oh, when it comes to connecting with your partner, I've heard you speak on it before, and a few others, on the performance that women sometimes feel that they need to do, and how that is disconnecting you more from each other and from, you know, your own pleasure, because you're up in your head when you really need to be centered and in your heart when you're connecting with your partner. So could you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah. And again, this is something that we can learn so embodied through a practice like self-pleasure. But then when you're with your partner, there is probably going to be a learning curve for both of you. I remember I started to tell Ryan, you know, actually, can you touch me like this? Can you do this slower? Can you do that faster? Can you add this in there? And it was frustrating when I first started to really communicate that, because then he was thinking, well, the things that I used to do don't work the same anymore. And now I have to learn to do this new thing. And so it really is, it does grow your patience and for both of you and your communication skills. But it's not just communication skills, like as in the words that you use and the word choice. It's even deeper than that. It's that level of vulnerability to expose your desire to someone and potentially be rejected or judged or told that you're too much, or no, I can't do that. Like, that's too hard.
Or can I add, like, feel like you're criticizing them?
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
such a
So
big
when
thing
it's perceived
too.
like a rejection,
Yeah,
yeah, we don't want
yeah,
them to feel criticized or
yeah.
rejected.
And
And that was a big thing.
especially like during sex, it's like
Yeah,
the worst.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like the worst
Yeah.
thing for anyone to feel like, oh, you don't like that. But I think
It shuts down the whole thing.
yeah, right.
I'm gonna mess it up.
So I just want to like chuck in a little, if there are any men out there listening to this, a little disclaimer is that like
A little direction doesn't mean you're not doing a good job.
yeah, because as a woman, like in the last 8.5 years of creating children, especially, I can't believe how many times my body has morphed and changed. And therefore my wants, needs, the way everything's working down there every time, like after I push a baby out, it's different again. Like it's all like everything's jumbled up. It's a mystery. And so like a lot of it, I feel like every time we've reconnected after I've had a child, I've had to really tap in and be like, no, that doesn't feel good. Like maybe right now, maybe forever.
Yeah.
Like we've got to swap it up now. So yeah, there's always, I think, being open to receiving that feedback really helps maintain the connection between you both, because especially in the phase of life we're in, where everything like your body
But
is
also,
growing,
like,
shrinking.
I wonder if
up,
men,
down.
I wonder if men, like they kind of need the direction. Because I mean, like if we're people who have like, oh, well, you know, like a lot of people can relate to watching porn and thinking, oh yeah, that's how you do it. And then, you know, like throw in a bunch of other things like dissociation with our bodies as women and, you know, thinking that just reaching like just, oh, let's get each other to orgasm, then it's all over. And that's the whole thing. Like that's a journey start to end. And then like, especially if you're in postpartum or you have children, like no libido, I feel like we're in this, there's like a bit of a full on soup mix
working
of
together,
how
working against you.
Like we've got to work together to kind of come out and be like, this is actually what living a pleasurable life looks like. And I think that men are going to have to listen and be able to have the conversation without feeling like I'm shit. I'm being criticized.
He
Because
gets
there's
feedback.
a lot of layers. Yeah, there's
not
feedback
criticism.
is not criticism. Yeah, because there is a lot to it, especially when we're talking about low to no libido postpartum, which
it takes a lot of patience.
Hard. Yeah.
And it's always changing.
Yeah.
The hormones and then as the kids are growing and they're in different stages and they're going through their different things, there's always going to be something. Granted, I really do believe that those first 5 years are harder in their own way on our nervous systems. Just the constant, need to respond to something, someone somebody's yelling, somebody's crying. Is that a hurt cry or is that a fake cry? Is that like a happy cry? What is that?
When they're calling mum, are they playing mums and dads, or do they actually want me?
Yeah. So when you're on high alert all the time, it's hard to get into the part of your system that can just really relax and be in ease and pleasure and rest digest mode,
Yeah. I mean, and how do you, because like I can definitely relate to having like low libido because I've had so many babies in such a short window, but like, and I can also relate to having a completely fried nervous system. So like, how did you manage? Because I mean, you had 2 children before you went on this transformation. And I imagine you would have had a wide nervous system because all mums do, unless you're a bloody saint. So yeah, I feel like
that was not me.
That is not me.
Bring in the whips and chains.
For your children. Not for no, I mean like I'm just trying to be like how that path doesn't seem clear. Like walking out of no libido and a completely fried nervous system where you're constantly on respond mode. Like, dads don't actually care when their babies are crying. They're like, oh, still, I mean, I'm down to have sex.
Sleep through it.
Like, are you kidding
not even
me?
aware.
I am dying here. Like I'm melting. I can't even see straight. Everything is foggy. So yeah.
Well, that's the first thing is I would de-emphasize like needing to kind of claw our way out of it and just be present with whatever's there. And the more that you can do that and really accept it for what it is right now, and you can also acknowledge the desire for something more. And this goes for anything. right? That's really when the ease began to really, I guess, kick in. And I began to get into this more flow and ease, was when I could just look at the situation and be like, you know what? Because Ryan also has it's not very prevalent now, but he would have flare ups of this nerve condition. And that's really what was that whole period of disability. He just didn't know what it was. And it was his whole loss of identity and ego and all of that. But he was diagnosed with this nerve dysfunction, and that there's no solution for. And so every time he would get a little bit injured, it was like he would be flatlined again as far as life goes. Like, oh, he's out again. Now I have this libido and he's not there to show up for me. And I don't want anybody else but him, you know? So there would be these seasons of really getting to be present with, okay, this sucks right now. This is hard. Earlier this year, he did a 41-day water fast because he just felt like spiritual invitation to do it, and he did it. And we were celibate for about 2.5 months. And I'm like, this is not what I prefer. This is not what I want. I was like dishing out ultimatums. I'm like, okay, but you need to at least do this for me. And he's like, I can't. I want to. And when we can really sit in the suck of something together and just be in the discomfort of it, there's so much intimacy in that, where nobody's trying to fix anybody, but we can just have an honest, heartfelt conversation of like, I miss sex. I miss us. I miss the desire. I miss the playfulness. I miss the erotic banter. I miss all of these things. And I'm here with you. And I don't need you to change. And I'm trusting that I am meant to have what I really desire. And so are you. And so I just want to keep the communication open that this is what I want. And maybe in some moments it really hurts. And I feel the absence as its presence of its own thing. But it's sitting in that void together. So when you're in those tough seasons, when you can just acknowledge that and be with it, there's no like recipe for that, really. It's just the more that you can do that, you'll more naturally and with less like effort find yourself lifting out of it. And because you're naturally becoming more heart connected as you are vulnerably sharing these things with each other. And almost like kind of building a fantasy for the future. You know, what would you like for this to look like in 5 years? What would you like for our sex life to be like when the kids are bigger and they're in school? You want to like fool around on an afternoon? You know, it's just, you know, because right now we're living this fantasy that we talked about years ago.
Yeah.
And it was just bringing that out into the open.
I think that's a really good point to make.
I actually like that. Like we just joke about like, oh, when the kids are, you know, like when we're 40, because we're so young and we've got all these kids, and we're like, oh, when we're 40, like we'll be able to go to the south of France or like somewhere probably by ourselves. And now it's going to be like, we could go there and have like all of that sex. And like,
we didn't have for so long.
Sex just enters the fantasy. It's not just like going somewhere alone. It's like doing that and just doing that there and doing it there and doing it there.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, Luci, which I feel like you pretty much just answered, but I'll phrase it for our men listening. If there are dads or men or partners out there who feel like their sexual needs aren't being met in whatever season of life they're going through, and maybe they've broached their partner about it and they're just like a don't touch me kind of phase, whether that's like breastfeeding can bring that on or just postpartum can definitely bring that on. What would your advice be to that?
I mean, immediately the things that come to mind are like, we're in this for the long haul and I choose you. Like that's what we really want to hear. When we're in a moment that we're not feeling the way that we would prefer to be feeling, the last thing that we need in a heart level is to be, even if they're not trying to do this, just to be made out to be the one that's holding us back, the problem in the relationship. There is no problem. There is, again, possibly a disconnect, because it can be more painful to express an unmet desire that has little to no chance of being met than it is to shut it down or to keep it to themselves. And so I know that this is risky. I understand this is very risky, what I'm saying here. But if they do very intentionally frame this with their partners, that I want to reveal my heart to you, and I don't want to hold back, and I also don't want to hurt you, and I don't want it to be any kind of accusation or blame or insufficiency on your part. And I just want, I want to be able to share the desires and the fears of my heart with you. Can we do that? Can we establish some kind of a container for that? And that's actually one of the first practices that I like to have clients do, is get into the practice of sharing both their fears and their desires with each other, with zero expectation of the other person taking away your fear or meeting your desire. Because you're just getting practiced in just sharing it. That's enough of a muscle to exercise.
Yeah, that was actually, it was in the Rewilding lovers course, and it's a really hard one to do. I found the dancing one way easier because we just got silly and it was a lot of fun. But when it comes to something serious, like sharing your fears and sharing your desires, it's a really vulnerable place to be in. So it does require a practice of strengthening that muscle.
And it's just as deep as you are willing to go, as your heart's ready to go, like as deep as, for example, I'm scared that if I don't get my sex drive back and I can't meet your needs, I'm going to be abandoned, or I won't be good enough for you. Or even if you don't physically leave me, you'll just like give up on us. Yeah. So those are the really vulnerable things to share that create that intimacy. You can't have that intimacy without letting that person see you.
Yeah, it seems like one of the biggest keys in this whole conversation is like clear-cut communication and not leaving the other person just think or make assumptions or make like, oh, I wonder what they're going through, or I wonder what he wants, or I wonder what she's feeling or desiring.
And also without the anger and without the judgment.
Because that's what it manifests as, right? Like
don't let it get to that point. Then we talk about it because we're pissed,
Yeah. Well, that's what it can lead to. Like if you've got a fear or a desire, but your partner has no idea, and you just are like, oh, well, they should know. And it kind of just creates this tension and this further frustration. And then you end up blurting out, all the things that you wish were happening, or
even something that's completely unrelated, and you just go off on some tangent that's
never about the thing.
Yeah.
And it's always obviously much harsher than it really is too, because you're frustrated, you're angry. It's been this, like you've let this tension build, or you've let, there's not been an opportunity, or you've not created the space to have like a proper conversation about where you're at, what is going on. And then, it really does. The lack of words really create that opportunity for just mess, icky mess.
Yeah. Just more of like an abyss between you.
Yeah.
And it's a starting of a dialogue that stays open. It's an open dialogue, not just a one-time conversation, which is the same thing with our kids. People ask like, how do you be openly yourself and online and all this stuff and talk about the things you do? What do they think about this? Well, we have an open dialogue about all of these things, especially with our high school daughters. They're in high school. They're both in relationships, and they have always come to us for advice and with their questions. And they had something, they weren't sure about their bodies. Like, is this normal? How do I, our daughter, our oldest daughter, her friends will come to her for advice on how to just love their bodies and be confident and touch themselves. And she's not going to like demonstrate or anything, but you know what I mean? Like, she's just a safe place for them to just talk about it.
This is a beautiful point, because like this is something that I think is so important is actually just, and you actually did post about this recently, is that you posted the little reel of you and Ryan just like being silly and playful, and obviously one of your kids is videoing it, and you're all over each other all the time, and it's super sweet. And I would say like most of us did not witness our parents treat each other like that, or repair a down. Like there was no repair, there's no like coming together, there's no for a lot of, I never really witnessed it at all like that. You just don't know what the love that looks like, and embodying it, and like, and then we've got to learn, like people have got to bloody watch porn to figure out how to have a relationship. But that's an extreme, it's an extreme version.
But if we as parents, and this actually, like, going back to your point of like sharing our vulnerabilities with each other as partners is such an important practice when, your kids start growing up and you want them to share their vulnerabilities with you. And if you can hold space for each other as in a relationship, well, then that is going to be seen and felt by your kids. And then all of a sudden you have that safe space for them too, which I've never linked that before this this moment. And and that is, it's such an important thing for us as parents to be able to create that safe environment for our kids, and like, so they can be vulnerable, they can share whatever is going on in their lives. And if we practice that as adults with each other, we're only going to be way better at holding the space for them when they come to us. So then something we spoke about with the reel that you shared was embodying what love is supposed to look like, what a relationship is supposed to look like, so our kids get to see that. So if we are constantly being doing PDAs in front of our kids and showing that we're playful and that there's love there, and because God knows all our kids would see us fighting and also turning away from each other and getting cranky. Yep. So you've really got to balance that out with, actually the relationship is the whole spectrum. Like, it's not just we're kind to each other behind closed doors, or when you guys are in bed, we snuggle on the couch. Like, we need to be showing them that throughout the day too.
Yeah. And it's demonstrating that.
Yeah. You don't want, you want your kids to be aiming for that in their own relationship. Not having to
so they know what it's like to be loved, and not have to like give tokens in return for love or in exchange for love. Our teenagers have seen us grow up with them. That's the thing. They've seen us at our worst. They've seen us at our most chaotic, volatile, explosive, out of control, and they've gotten to see the transformation, which also involved a lot of healing for them as well. Because they weren't in a place or in early childhood where they felt safe to just have emotions and have that space held for them. We didn't know how to do that for ourselves. So now they have such a deep wisdom to them, not only having experienced this with us, but also just getting to witness us in the day to day and how we work through the conflicts and talk through the things and trust the universe and like tie in all of these pieces. So,
how old were they when you guys went through that?
Let's see, when I had to do some math. Let's see. It was 2015 when he was going through when that season happened. So they were, let's see, that was 8 years ago. So I guess they were 7 and 8.
See, that's so comforting because, like we live in this, with all this information of like the first 7 years is so important, and if you don't get it right, your kids are going to be screwed.
Right. Yeah.
But to to know
psychologically, you're like, you're fucked.
Sorry.
But no,
sorry guys.
It is comforting to know because it's it's obviously correct that there is so much forgiveness there, and there is so much room still for them to develop and become super emotionally healthy and able to transform beyond those first 7 years when it's modeled to them in the house and by their parents. Obviously that speaks volumes. So
Luci, before we wrap up, I'd love to derail this a little bit and talk about your reel that went viral. It went viral in Australia anyway. which is actually how I got introduced to your page in the first place.
Yeah.
And it was the video of you washing Ryan's hair in the bath.
Yeah.
And as soon as I watched it, and I didn't even read the words, I was just looking at the images, and I sent it to Tucker. I was like, how do we set up our bathroom so we can do something like this? I need to, and I need to recreate this. But then I think he read the words and was like, oh, dude, have you actually taken on board? And it was about not mothering your husband, but being able to take care of them. And it was just such a beautiful, it just, God tugged at my heartstrings, because I was like, that's so beautiful, because how often are we, criticizing and mothering, and because we're mothering our children, we end up mothering our husbands as well. And so many times I'll talk to friends and they're just like, oh yeah, I've got, they'll have 3 kids, and they're like, well, really, I've got 4 kids because I've got to look after,
Yeah,
and
we hear that all the time.
All the time. And it's like, yeah, it is emasculating, but it's a comment and we laugh about it, but we really should stop, because it's such a bad place to be in your relationship when you feel like you have to mother your husband. So
yeah, because you can't trust him. There's that feeling of lack of respect and trust.
Yeah, which is one of the biggest things that our men require from us is trust and respect. So I'd love you to just expand on that just a little bit, because it was really beautiful, and I feel like all our listeners need to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I spent a lot of years in our marriage mothering him and thinking that that was me loving him, unaware that that was me trying to control him and trying to avoid rejection by vulnerably asking him and expressing what I want beyond the logistics of make the sandwich this way, or make sure that this kid has this for school. It's not even about the logistics, the external form of it. It's the heart behind it. And this is something that's really, really difficult to articulate, right? And explain in words. But when you see it, you know it, you recognize it. The mind looks for to intellectualize more knowledge, but the heart will recognize truth. And so when you see someone who has that, and that was so random that was the reel that went viral, because I was on my trip to Peru, my first pilgrimage by myself ever, going to my homeland and connecting with my ancestors and all that. And this reel is going viral. I'm like, what's happening? What is happening right now? Why this? But in the middle of that, he was on his fast. And unbeknownst to me, I did that ritual just a few days before he got the message to do the fast. So it was like a ceremonial preparation of this, very devotional act of love. So the difference is me doing this in this season versus, let's say, 8 years ago. It's the difference between, hey, you're not doing a good job washing your hair and you kind of smell weird, so let me do it for you, okay? And let me just make it package it nice for you so that you will say yes, and then I can just get what I want and take care of this problem, because your hair is a problem. And so that's how I would have approached it then, as opposed to I'm just bursting with love for you, that I want to do something really special for you. Not just suck your dick, not just that's great. That's great. Hold the dick, hold the balls. Solid advice once again. But I want to do something that's different and something that, take notes, people. Something I don't even know where the idea came from. I just thought, oh, this seems like the thing to do. And he said yes. And then so we did it. And so it's these, when you're open to that flow of erotic aliveness, and you trust those little intuitive nudges that you get, and you make the invitation as the oracle, and then he says yes, there is already such an intimacy and a trust and a connection and a safety there, that he knows this is not some kind of form of manipulation or control. It's an act of devotion, of love. So yeah, the very common, the distinction between the mothering and the nurturing and being a nourishment for each other is the trust and respect present or not? And that's something that only we can really honestly inquire into.
Oh, Luci, I could literally talk to you for days and days and days. You are amazing. And
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's been all this time. It goes by so fast.
I know. And no, it's been such a beautiful conversation, and I'm going to just chuck it out there. We're going to get you on again.
Yeah, we have more to explore.
There's so much more to
There's
talk about.
so much more to talk about. But yeah, I feel like this has been a beautiful conversation in and of itself, actually quite relaxing and also very empowering. And I hope that all of our listeners find that as well. Are there any offerings that you have online, or where can people find you?
Yeah, so all of the current goodies will be at lucilampe.com, or you can go to my Instagram at Luci Lampe and click on the link there. And yeah, there are courses for women, courses for couples, coaching for those who want more of the one-on-one support. And every once in a while, if there's a live event or a retreat or a workshop, I will also post about that on my website.
Amazing. And we can link to all of that in our show notes. Thank you so much again, Luci, for coming on. And remember, people, cup the balls.
Hold the dick, cup the balls.
This is the takeaway.
Oh my gosh. So funny.
Oh, thanks again, Luci.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Road to Wisdom podcast. To join the journey, you can follow us on Instagram at theroadtowisdom.podcast and at www.theroadtowisdompodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We look forward to seeing you next week with more juicy content.